This is the case of Robert Baltovich, who was wrongfully convicted of the murder of his girlfriend Elizabeth Bain. Baltovich led a regular life until it was turned upside down the day that Elizabeth Bain disappeared. Baltovich was 25 years old when his girlfriend went missing. He attended the University of Toronto's Scarborough campus, where he had just received his degree in psychology. This was Elizabeth Bain, a 22-year-old at the time she went missing. The day to be remembered was June 19, 1990, when many lives changed forever. It was the start of the case of Robert Baltovich and the search for answers regarding what truly happened to Elizabeth on June 19, 1990. The couple at the time had just celebrated Robert's graduation just the day before she disappeared. Bain had gifted Robert flowers and a poem. June 19, 1990, the day of the crime, Elizabeth told her parents she was going to campus to check the tennis schedule, but she never returned. Robert Baltovich was devastated to hear this news about the woman he hoped to marry one day, and this was the start of a trial he would never forget. Elizabeth Bain's car was recovered a few days after she went missing, along with the blood-stained seats in the backseat of her vehicle. Forensics indicated that the blood was in fact Elizabeth Bain's, but her body has never been found. The Toronto Police Homicide Squad took on the case, and based on unreliable eyewitness testimony and circumstantial evidence, Robert Bain was arrested. Baltovich was told he murdered the woman he loved. On November 19, 1990, he was arrested and charged with the murder of Elizabeth Bain. 2 eyewitness testimonies provided the basis of evidence that led to the conviction of Robert Baltovich. The Crown based their arguments on the fact that Elizabeth had actually attempted to break up with Baltovich, and the resulting murder was due to a jealous rage. The eyewitness testimony of both Marianne Perez and David Dibben was the core of the Crown's case against Baltovich. Yet, it is evident how and why the testimony of these 2 individuals was not credible and presented several issues regarding their reliability. Marianne Perez was the first of one of the 2 main witnesses leading to Robert Baltovich's conviction. Perez claimed that she had seen both Elizabeth Bain and Robert Baltovich sitting together at a picnic table on campus at around 5:40 p.m. on the day of her disappearance. Robert Baltovich said he was home with family at that time, and this was confirmed true by several members. Taking Perez's eyewitness testimony as credible evidence would in fact conclude that Baltovich was the killer if the evidence had been correct. Marianne Perez did not have a clear recollection of the man she actually saw that day, whom she stated was Robert Baltovich, with Elizabeth Bain sitting at a picnic table. This brings forth the main issues present in this case, which was the utilization of eyewitness testimony that was in fact unreliable. Not only was Perez's initial recall of Baltovich questionable, she had also undergone hypnosis. After the hypnosis, she was suddenly able to recall more details that allowed the police to implicate him. Perez was then able to choose Baltovich out of a photo lineup, making him the primary suspect. David Dibben was the second eyewitness. He testified to seeing Robert Baltovich driving Bain's car 3 days after she had gone missing. The day would have been June 22, 1990, and if what Dibben saw was correct, then Baltovich was certainly the killer. Once again, initially, Dibben did not have a very detailed description of what he saw, and he did not have the greatest view, making his eyewitness not the best match and not very credible. It was only until after the police got involved and asked Dibben to testify that his description had evolved in accordance with police proceedings. The jury was the next big factor to recognize and understand in regards to Baltovich's case. The jury believed the eyewitness testimony and found Baltovich guilty. This was the case despite the serious issues present with its reliability. He was convicted on March 31st, 1992. He was sentenced to life in prison with no eligibility for parole for 17 years. Baltovich remained hopeful, and he knew in his heart he did not do it, and that in time things would work out. But he became depressed and got tired of waiting, so he made a call to a lawyer, James Lockyer. This was the start of Robert Baltovich's acquittal. He appealed his conviction. That is when Innocence Canada took a hold of Baltovich's case and made it a priority to get him out. Innocence Canada found several issues with the court's proceedings. The jury was instructed through bias, which held an emphasis on the Crown's case, ignoring the defense, Robert Baltovich. The jury was not given the adequate instruction regarding the intricacies of the eyewitness evidence, and there were issues with reliability that entailed problematic details regarding the eyewitness testimony, such as hypnosis and an overall lack of accountable recall by both witnesses. Therefore, on March 31st, 2000, Robert Baltovich was granted bail, pending the hearing for his appeal. The Court of Appeal agreed that there was problems with the court's proceedings during Baltovich's trial. The trial had in fact been unfair, and there were significant errors present regarding how the law should have been conducted. Problematic details were not mentioned to the jury, and the judge unduly promoted the Crown side due to a level of bias. The judge carried a certain tone and utilized rhetorical questions that indicated he thought Baltovich was guilty. A new trial was ordered on December 2nd, 2004. This trial was to be free of bias and legal errors, to give Baltovich the fair chance he was entitled to. He was denied of his right to a fair and balanced charge, to receive a fair trial under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This new trial brought to light a very probable killer, which would be Paul Bernardo. Bernardo was a well-known serial killer and rapist. He committed multiple violent sexual assaults around the same time as Elizabeth Bain's disappearance. In 1995, Bernardo was declared a dangerous offender and was given the title of the Scarborough Rapist. All of his attacks had in fact occurred around the UTSC campus, where Bain went to school, which also happened to be around her neighborhood as well. At the new trial, the defense was able to present Paul Bernardo as evidence. The patterns of Bernardo's attacks and the occurrence of Bain's disappearance aligned with one another, and therefore presenting this Scarborough rapist as the potential killer was substantial evidence for Baltovich's new trial. The Supreme Court of Canada was to make the final decision regarding the case of Robert Baltovich, with its new circumstances in the retrial. Marianne Perez, a prior witness, was no longer able to testify in the retrial. This was due to the element of hypnosis used. She was no longer credible, leaving less of a case on the Crown side for implicating Baltovich. Suzanne Nadon and David Dibben were the other two witnesses involved, who had also given questionable testimonies. Their descriptions of what they had seen the day of Bain's disappearance had developed over time to fit the description of the accused. Dibben did not have a clear view of Baltovich driving Bain's car days after she went missing. He was only able to give a description that actually matched Baltovich as the police proceedings went on, making his eyewitness testimony very weak. Nadon, the third witness, claimed she saw someone who resembled Bain through the trees on campus the day of her disappearance. However, her statement only became credible after she had undergone hypnosis as well, which is no longer admissible in court. Robert Baltovich served 8 long years in prison, and it was only in 2008 that he was acquitted, making the entire process of his wrongful conviction 18 years long. He had to wait 18 years to have his name cleared after being wrongfully accused and convicted, which changed his life forever. He called it an 18-year nightmare. There were many factors that contributed to Baltovich's wrongful conviction. These included judicial errors and the misapplication of the law, such as the judge's tone during the trial, which painted Baltovich as guilty. The Crown's side was promoted and the defense was essentially ignored. Additionally, the jury was not given the adequate instruction to make informed decisions. They went based off of what they heard, which was eyewitness testimony that they took as fully credible evidence. This brings forth the second main issue, which was the use of eyewitness testimony. Inaccurate eyewitness testimony, to be exact. This was the main issue leading to the wrongful conviction. Relying on the testimony of David Dibben, who had an unclear visual of what he had seen, and Marianne Perez, who had undergone hypnosis, which helped the Crown's case develop as well. Hypnosis represents the existence of malpractice in this case. There is always a certain pressure for conviction. Police feel the need to find the answers as quickly and easily as possible. This was through Baltovich, since he was the main suspect and the boyfriend of the missing person. Eyewitness led to him, and he was zeroed in on to be framed as a murderer in a jealous rage. There are tons of psychological consequences as a result. Baltovich will never be the same. He lost his girlfriend and was blamed for her disappearance. He had 8 years of his life taken away and is looked at as a criminal, regardless of being acquitted. It was a high-profile case that comes with a reputation. He can no longer feel safe or feel like himself again. He carries fear that he is viewed as an angry person or a threat to society. People still view him as guilty. Thankfully, he was able to appeal his conviction after 8 years, and he got out on bail, only to be acquitted 10 years later. This was with the help of John Lockyer and the ability to present Paul Bernardo as the potential suspect. Either way, Baltovich was not guilty, and he did not commit the crime. Unfortunately, his case lives on, and the consequences can never be forgotten. Not only was the life of Elizabeth Bain taken away, but Robert Baltovich had his taken away as well.